1992, Springfield, Illinois. It was a summer downpour. 4 little girls vanished without a trace. No one was arrested. No one could give any answers. 29 years later, at a regular birthday party, a woman recognized a dress her daughter used to wear, now on a strange little girl. She didn't scream. She didn't ask questions. She just went home quietly and started digging up a nightmare that had been buried. Her daughters never vanished. Their names were just changed. And the one who took them called it love. One Sunday afternoon in 2021, Dolores Cardenas was sitting in the corner of her neighbor's backyard in the quiet town of Willow Creek, California. It was the 8th birthday of the neighbor's girl, Ana Sofia. Mrs. Dolores wasn't very close with the child, but she was invited because she lived right next door. She brought a box of homemade cookies and sat quietly near the rose bushes, watching everyone. The party was lively. Kids ran around, chasing each other. Adults laughed and chatted, and music from a portable speaker filled the yard. Dolores kept a thoughtful look on her face, her eyes looking tired, until a little girl walked out from inside the house holding a cup of vanilla ice cream. The girl had shoulder-length hair, a slightly slanted fringe, and most importantly, she was wearing a cream-colored floral dress with light purple patterns. At that exact moment, Dolores's whole body stiffened. She gripped the armrest of her chair, her eyes glued to the dress. That dress. It was just like one of the 4 she had sewn for her twin daughters. The same color, the same style, the same slightly gathered cuff on the sleeve. Even the diagonal stitching on the collar was identical. Dolores stood up, slow but determined, and walked toward the little girl. "My dear," she said, her voice a bit rough but gentle, "could I ask you who made that dress for you?" The girl looked at her, confused, and before she could answer, a man appeared from the barbecue grill. He quickly walked over and stood between Dolores and the girl. "Excuse me, ma'am," the man said firmly. "Is there a problem?" Dolores was a little startled, but didn't back down. "The girl's dress, I used to sew like that. It's very similar." "Too similar," she said. Still looking at the girl, the man gently squeezed his daughter's shoulder and said clearly, "Her mom bought this dress at the San Antonio market. It's not secondhand. Please, give us a little space. My daughter is getting scared." The girl hid completely behind her father. Dolores breathed heavily, her lips pressed together. She wanted to say something, but she just shook her head, turned around, and quickly walked away from the party. Some people watched her go. No one understood what had happened. Dolores returned home with a pale face. Hector, her husband, was cleaning the patio table. Seeing his wife come back earlier than expected, he stood up and walked over. "What's wrong, my love?" he asked. Dolores didn't answer right away. She sat down in a chair and rubbed her face with her hands. "Do you remember the girls' flower dresses?" she said, her voice still trembling. "This afternoon, I saw a little girl wearing one just like it, as if it was cut from the ones I sewed." Hector frowned slightly and sat next to his wife. He didn't answer right away, but looked into her eyes. Dolores looked back, her eyes full of worry. "That similar?" he asked. Dolores nodded. "Every stitch. The collar part too. Exactly the same, down to the smallest detail." Hector no longer had his usual calm expression. He stood up, went to the living room, opened an old wooden drawer, and pulled out a rusty tin box. Inside were old photos, school IDs, diplomas. everything that was left from the time the girls lived with them. Dolores followed him and sat on the floor. She pulled out an old photo of the 4 girls, Mariela, Renata, Lucia, Isela, on their last outing to eat with their mom. The photo was taken in front of the Golden Chicken Fried Chicken restaurant in Springfield. The 4 girls were sitting around the table, smiling very happily. Dolores gently stroked the photo. Suddenly, she stopped, her eyes fixed on the left corner of the background of the photo, where a reddish-brown pickup truck was parked on the side of the street. It looked like the truck had accidentally appeared in the photo, but Dolores felt something was strange. She put on her reading glasses, held the photo closer to the light. She traced the outline of the truck with her finger. Then she gently tapped the photo, where there was a blurry logo on the vehicle's door. "Look at this." She handed the photo to Hector. "That blurry logo, it looks like it has an H, then a U, I think also an E, Huerta." Hector took his glasses and put them on to see. He frowned. Then he nodded. "That rings a bell. Looks like the kind of logo on old trucks from the 80s. Dolores continued to stare. She mumbled, "I think I've seen this symbol before. When the girls were in first grade." They sat in silence for a few minutes. Dolores put the photo back in the box. But before closing it, she pulled out another photo, also taken that day, but from a different angle. In this photo, the truck was a bit clearer, and in the vehicle's window, there was a blurry silhouette of a person, but shaped like a man with a wide-brimmed hat. Dolores didn't say anything else. She put the photo away and closed the box. Dolores stood up, looked out the window. She didn't cry, but her hands were clenched. For the first time in almost 30 years, she felt something from back then they had missed. The next morning, Dolores woke up early. She sat at the kitchen table, spreading out the old photo. Next to it, a notebook, a pen, and a pair of large glasses. Hector poured coffee and placed it in front of his wife. "What are you planning?" he asked. "I'm going to St. Hope Elementary School," Dolores replied concisely. "See if they still have the old teacher files. If there's a Huerta name, we'll know until what year he taught there." Hector nodded. He didn't say anything else, but his eyes never left the photo of the truck. St. Hope Elementary School was over 2 miles from their house. Dolores took the bus to the school gate. The school had changed its new sign, but the iron gate, the brick courtyard, and the row of single-story classrooms were still exactly the same as before. She introduced herself as a former parent and said she was looking for information to organize a reunion for alumni from the early 90s. She was attended by Ms. Miriam, the secretary, who had worked at the school for over 30 years. "Do you remember a teacher named Huerta?" Dolores asked. Miriam tilted her head, thinking. "Oh, Mr. Tomas Huerta. Yes, he taught 1B. Kind, a man of few words. But I remember he left suddenly." "Did he move?" Dolores pressed. "They said he went to live in the United States with some relatives. But there were also rumors." Miriam looked around, then lowered her voice. "A few years ago, I heard the lady at the stationery store say that someone had seen him in the northern area. There's a farm or something like that for children there. Some called it a charity camp, something like hacienda." "Children's hacienda?" Dolores repeated. Miriam nodded slowly. "Yes, that name." That afternoon, when she got home, Dolores called an old friend, Guillermo, who used to be a software engineer and was now retired. She briefly told him the story and sent him the photo of the truck by email. "Help me see the license plate on this truck in this photo better. As clear as possible," she told him. One day later, Guillermo called back. "It's not 100% clear, but the numerical part matches a vehicle registered in 1992, a brick red Ford Ranger. Owner, Tomás Ismael Huerta Martinez." Dolores froze. "Are you sure?" "I just used software to increase clarity and compare the plate. Although the photo is blurry, the characters almost completely match. This is a reliable result." Hearing that answer, Dolores gently squeezed the edge of the table, her palms sweating. Her heart beat clearly, not from fear, but from hope, an emotion she had tried to bury for almost 3 decades, now suddenly gushing out like overflowing water. She nodded slightly, her lips trembling but saying nothing. Her eyes never left the screen. The numerical characters in the old photo, though blurry, appeared like a red thread directly connecting to the past. "If it's his truck," she thought quietly, "then it's not necessarily the end, but it could be the beginning." At night, Dolores pulled out her daughter's old notebook. She opened the middle page where Mariela had drawn a truck. In the drawing, there was a window and a man with a wide-brimmed hat. Dolores didn't remember seeing that drawing before. But now, all the details were starting to connect like a puzzle. "He didn't leave," she said. Hector was behind her, holding a cup of hot tea. "Huerta?" "Yes, he's still in Mexico. And it's possible he's the one who took the girls." Dolores looked at the notebook page, her fingers tracing the scribbled lines. "But why?" Hector asked. Dolores didn't answer right away. She looked out the window where the afternoon's shadow fell on the old wall. The wind gently moved the curtain like a reminder. Finally, she said slowly, firmly, "I don't know. But if he was following the girls, if he was a few steps away from them without anyone knowing, then Emmy needs to know the reason. Whatever it is." Hector looked at his wife. Both understood that, after almost 30 years, they couldn't bear another void. "We have to find him," Hector said softly. "Whatever it takes," Dolores replied. A week after identifying the truck's license plate in the photo as Tomás Huerta's, Dolores researched the children's hacienda more deeply. The name Miriam had mentioned at the old school. She looked up the address online and read old local newspaper articles. The hacienda was in the upper northern area, almost a 4-hour drive from Willow Creek. The official registered name was Support Center for Unaccompanied Migrant Children. It had no website, no direct phone number, only a mailing address and some blurry photos in newspapers. Dolores printed a map and marked the route. She told Hector, "Let's go. I want to see it with my own eyes." Hector looked at his wife as she spread the map on the table, her hands trembling slightly, but her gaze unwavering. He saw again the figure of the woman who had once taken care of their 4 children alone, who had pedaled 3 miles just to find the doll Mariela had lost. And now, after 29 years, she was still there, not waiting for anyone to show her the way, not needing anyone to convince her. Hector swallowed, silent for a moment. In his heart there was some pity and admiration. All those years, he had borne the pain in silence, while she kept it firmly in her heart without ever letting go. He nodded. "All right. I won't let you go alone." Friday morning, they left early. Hector drove and Dolores sat beside him, hugging a thin folder. The old photo, Huerta's history printed from a public file, and a notebook. The road became increasingly lonely. After passing the last small town, the car turned onto a red dirt road that cut through a sparse forest. A rotten wooden sign appeared after a curve. Protection Center for the Future of Forgotten Children. The main building appeared. A row of low-roofed wooden houses, a neat lawn, some children playing ball in a corner of the yard. There was no fence, no iron gate, just a chicken coop and a pumpkin vine by the road. Hector stopped the car. Dolores got out, adjusted her jacket, and walked to the front door. A young woman opened the door, smiling. "Hello, sirs. How can I help you?" Dolores smiled. "We were passing through this area. We heard this is a child care center, so we wanted to see if we could help in any way." The young woman nodded. "Yes, I'm Fernanda. I'm in charge of receiving visitors here. My dad, Mr. Huerta, isn't here today, but I can show you the center." Fernanda took them on a tour. She was about 30, with her brown hair pulled back, spoke clearly and softly. When she spoke, she looked directly, with a calm gaze. But that same gaze made Dolores constantly look at her out of the corner of her eye. There was something very strange. Not exactly the same, but familiar. They passed through the small classroom, the dining hall, the dormitory area. The children were learning to write. Some greeted the visitors politely. Fernanda explained everything. The center currently has 18 children. They are mainly abandoned children near the border, or undocumented. Volunteer doctors and teachers come every week. Dolores nodded, not asking much. She remained calm. Until they sat down to rest on a bench under a tree, she asked, "Have you been here since you were little?" Fernanda smiled. "My father Huerta brought me when I was very young. He said he found us on a rainy summer night. We are miracle children. He always told us that." Dolores continued to ask, in an even voice, "Just you? Or is there someone else?" "There are 4 of us. We were brought in at the same time," Fernanda replied. "But the other 3 have already been transferred to other centers. At that time, this place didn't have enough space." Dolores looked at her hands clasped in her lap. She took a deep breath. "Do you remember anything before coming here?" she asked. Fernanda was silent for a few seconds. Then she shook her head. "I'm not sure. Papa Huerta said he brought us when we were very small. I only remember the sound of the rain and an embroidered blanket with a sun on it." The tour ended. Dolores asked for an information folder. Fernanda happily gave it to her, along with a cup of ginger tea. "You can come back any time," the young woman said. "The children really like it when adults visit them." Hector shook Fernanda's hand. Dolores nodded, saying nothing else. On the way home, the car passed through a pine forest. Dolores wasn't looking at the scenery. She was thinking about her 4 little daughters and the eyes of the first one. That night, when she got home, Dolores didn't go to her bedroom. She sat in the living room, turned on a small lamp, and spread the old photo on the table. She used a magnifying glass to examine every detail of Mariella's face, her eldest daughter. Then she opened her phone. She quietly opened the photo folder she had just taken at the orphanage. There was a photo of Fernanda bending down, arranging papers for the children. When she smiled sideways, Dolores stopped. She put Mariella's photo next to Fernanda's. Straight nose, slightly rounded chin, deep brown eyes, bright when she smiled. Identical, undeniably. She clenched her hands, her voice choked. "Mariella, is that you, my love?" 3 days after the first visit, Dolores called Fernanda again. Uncle Hector and I have thought it over carefully. We want to support the orphanage long-term, not a lot, but regularly. Can we come back this weekend? Fernanda replied immediately. Of course. My dad really likes people like you. Saturday morning, Dolores dressed in a light gray dress and went with Hector again to the children's hacienda. The same red dirt road, the same old pine forest, and the wooden sign with faded letters. When they arrived, Fernanda was already waiting for them in the yard. My dad couldn't make it in time today, she said as she led them inside. I can take care of you instead. Dolores nodded. She didn't ask anything else. They sat at the reception desk. Hector began to talk about the sponsorship plan. We want to contribute to improving the children's meals and school supplies. We can do it quarterly. Fernanda took notes and then invited them to tour the dormitory area. Dolores actively suggested, "Could you take me to see the area where the girls live? Last time I didn't have time to see it." The girls' dormitory area was a row of separate wooden houses behind the playground. The hallway was long, the wooden floor old but clean. The rooms were simple, with neatly made bunk beds. When Fernanda bent down to pick up a bunch of keys she had dropped by the door of room number 3, Dolores stood to her left, and her gaze suddenly stopped. Below Fernanda's nape, right at the hairline, there was a small white scar. It wasn't long, but it was noticeable. Dolores froze. That scar, she remembered it well. Mariella had fallen down the stairs at her grandmother's house when she was only 5 years old. Her knee bled and her nape swelled, needing 2 stitches. That scar never faded. Dolores turned her face, hiding her gaze. Excuse me, I'm going to the bathroom for a moment. Fernanda showed her the way. Dolores entered the small room at the end of the hallway, locked the door, and quickly went to the room across the hall, which had a wooden sign with the name Fernanda. The room was tidy. The wardrobe was slightly open. Inside was a small shelf with a comb, hair ties, and a plastic box with personal items. Dolores took out the comb and quickly examined it. There were some hairs trapped. Carefully, she took out 3, wrapped them in a clean handkerchief, and put them in the inside pocket of her jacket. In less than 2 minutes, she left the room, went back to the real bathroom, turned on the tap slightly to avoid suspicion, and returned to the hallway. Fernanda noticed nothing unusual. That same afternoon, when she got home, Hector called a private clinic in Dallas, Texas, where they knew an old doctor who had helped them with vaccinations years ago. The clinic accepted the sample and gave them an appointment for the results in 10 days. Dolores handed the paper bag to her husband, saying nothing. Hector nodded, put the sample in a plastic box, and carefully sealed it. The next day, Dolores went to the old mechanic's shop near St. Hope Elementary School and asked for Mr. Alfonso, who had been in charge of looking after the cars at the elementary school for over 20 years. Hello, Mr. Alfonso. I'm the mother of the 4 twin girls who studied at your school years ago. The thin old man, wearing an old cloth hat, squinted at her. Ah, I remember. They disappeared at the fried chicken restaurant, right? Yes, Dolores said. Today I came to ask you something about Teacher Huerta. Alfonso hesitated. Teacher Huerta? A long time ago. Dolores, holding back her voice, slowly asked, Back then, did you ever see him near the school after classes? The old man lowered his head to think for a while. Then he said slowly, I don't want any trouble. But once I saw him sitting in a red truck, parked outside the school gate, several days in a row. I asked him, and he just smiled. saying he was waiting for an acquaintance. Dolores clenched her hands. Alfonso continued. One day, I saw him staring at the playground, where your oldest daughter, the girl, what was her name? Mariella, Dolores said. Yes, Mariella. She was playing on the slide. He watched her for a while and then left in his car. He didn't say anything. Dolores thanked him and left with her head bowed. That night, she sat in the kitchen. Hector poured her hot tea and placed it in front of her. Dolores didn't drink. She silently opened the drawer and pulled out an old calendar from 1992. She opened it to May. On the 23rd, she circled it in red, the day Mariella had told her, "Mom, today a strange man gave me a lollipop, but I dropped it." That day, she just nodded, not asking anything else. She thought it was a kid thing. Now she remembered. The candy had a red wrapper, and Mariella kept repeating, "The man was wearing a vest." But he didn't say anything. Dolores clenched her hands. He was following us for a long time, and he waited for the right moment, she said. Hector sat across from her in silence. The kitchen was quiet. Outside, it started to drizzle. A week after sending the hair sample to the clinic, Dolores received a call almost at noon. She was chopping vegetables in the kitchen when the phone rang. She dried her hands and picked up. The operator's voice was clear. "Good morning. St. Mary's Lab, I'm calling to inform you about the results of the DNA analysis that Mrs. Dolores Cardenas sent." Dolores held her breath. "Go ahead." "We compared the hair sample with a blood sample archived at the Children's Hospital of Dallas from 1991. The result? 99.9% match." She didn't respond immediately. She just nodded, even though the other side couldn't see her. The operator continued. "The result will be sent by email. If you need a printed copy with a legal seal, please come to the clinic in 3 days." Dolores hung up. Her hands trembled slightly. She walked out the door and quietly called, "Hector." Dolores froze for a few seconds after hanging up. The dry sound of the beep ended the call. But in her heart, another sound resonated. The echo of a door that had just opened after 29 years of being closed. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from a feeling she had never dared to name: confirmation. She walked slowly towards the door, her lips moving but still not speaking a word. When she saw Hector's silhouette in the backyard, pruning some old flower pots, she softly called him, "Hector." He turned. Seeing his wife's gaze, he dropped the shears and quickly approached. Dolores didn't cry, but her voice broke like water overflowing a dam. "It's our daughter. It's Mariella." The two spouses sat facing each other in the living room. On the table, the printed result from the email with a digital seal. Hector looked at the confirmation text and then looked up. "So, it's the girl. Fernanda is Mariella." Dolores nodded slowly. "Let's go to the police. Right away," Hector said, his voice determined. Dolores put her hand on the paper. Then she shook her head. "Not yet. The other 3 are missing. If he realizes we're following him, he'll take the girls away. And this time, there will be no photos, no traces, nothing to hold on to." The next morning, Dolores called Fernanda again. "Uncle and I have reached an agreement. If possible, we want to long-term support the 4 girls that Mr. Huerta found. You call them miracle children, right?" Fernanda seemed surprised, but she still agreed. I'll let my dad know, but he's still undergoing treatment for lung problems, and he doesn't receive many visitors. Maybe he'll just write you a letter in response." 3 days later, an envelope arrived at Dolores's house. Handwritten, with clear, slanted handwriting, signed by Huerta. The content thanked them for their goodwill, but subtly rejected any direct meeting, under the pretext of ensuring the privacy of the girl's past. Dolores read the letter, folded it, and said nothing. Dolores placed the envelope on the table, gently smoothing the edge of the paper as if touching something alive, or rather, trying to feel the lie hidden behind each line. The reason for privacy, the past, carefully chosen words. But she knew well, when a man builds a false world, he won't let anyone in unless forced to open the door. She stood up, walked silently to the old wooden cabinet, and pulled out the folders she had kept since the first trip. She put everything back together: the old photo, the farm map, the testimony from the elementary school caretaker, the copy of Huerta's letter, and the DNA test paper. Hector came in from outside and saw his wife putting things in a cloth bag. "What are you going to do?" She looked him directly in the eyes, her voice firm. "I found one, but the other 3 are still somewhere, living with other names, other memories. If I stop now, they'll be trapped in the dream of someone who isn't their father for another 29 years." Hector took the handle of the bag. He nodded. He didn't need to ask anything else. On this return to the hacienda, she asked to see the life records of each girl in the sponsorship program. The reason she gave was she needed to assess the cases to prioritize support. Fernanda led her to the reception office. When she went out to prepare tea, Dolores took the opportunity to photograph part of the internal exchange list that was posted on the bulletin board. 3 names were clearly visible: Jimena, April, Noah. When she got home, Dolores called Leticia, an old friend who had worked at the city's civil registry. She sent her the 3 names, asking her to look for their birth certificates. 2 days later, Leticia called. There are no official birth certificates that match any of these 3 names. However, there are internal adoption records provided by a private organization. It's called Hope Center, signed by the representative Tomas Huerta. Do they have birth certificates? Yes, but they are all copies from a private system. They didn't go through the city's civil registry. That is, self-generated documents, not confirmed by public authorities. Dolores thanked her and wrote down each file number. That night, Hector again suggested calling the police. "You have DNA, fake documents, evidence of illegal adoption. Enough to open an investigation." But Dolores shook her head. "We've barely found one. If Huerta finds out, the other 3 will disappear. He did it once. He'll do it again." "What do you plan to do?" Hector asked. Dolores looked at the camp map, tapping the table with her finger. "I have to get into the archives area. Without Fernanda knowing. Without anyone seeing me." "Are you going in alone?" "There's no other way." The night before she left, Dolores sat alone under the table lamp. She placed a photo of Fernanda, taken on her most recent visit, next to a photo of Mariela as a child. She stared at them for a long time. Her eyes were not teary nor trembling. She was just a mother who had discovered the truth. But her daughter still didn't know who she was. She mumbled, as if talking to herself. "You don't know who I am, but I already know who you are." Dolores called Fernanda again, this time with a new reason. "I know a group that writes for the social section of a local newspaper. They say if I can record and take some photos of the center, it could help get more funds." Fernanda didn't hesitate. So, can you stay one night? I'll prepare a room for volunteers. Dolores said, I want to stay myself, to better understand what life is like here. That afternoon, Hector took Dolores to the place and then returned. She carried a small bag, some personal belongings, a camera, a notebook, and something else, a spare key. On her most recent visit, Dolores had carefully swapped a bunch of keys when Fernanda left her bag open in the reception room. She wasn't sure what they would open, but now she would try. Night fell. All rooms turned off their lights at 9 o'clock. The children were already asleep. The main building was silent. Dolores waited until 10. She put on her jacket, opened the door of the volunteer guest room, and walked softly down the hallway. She didn't use a flashlight, just followed the faint light of a distant bulb in the hallway. The storage area was behind Huerta's office, a thick wooden door with its own lock. She tried one of the keys she had just taken. It fit. The door opened. Inside was a room about 12 square meters, full of organized files and documents. Dolores followed the labels. One corner had a red symbol, MC, which could be the abbreviation for Miracle Children. She took out each file to review it. Jimena, April, Noah, Fernanda. Each file stated, found at the center's door, no known relatives, placed under special care. Not a single line of detailed description, no dates, no witnesses. Dolores stopped when she saw a small notebook with an old leather cover mixed among the files. She opened it. Slanted handwriting on the first page. They are a replacement gift. Each one is a part of what I lost. Every time they laugh, it's like I hear my voice from before. She turned to the last page. They don't remember, but I do. And that's enough. Just below, there was a loose sheet of paper, a sketch of the hacienda's internal layout. At the end of the map, a room numbered in red ink, Room 7. It didn't appear on the official plan. A note next to it. Reorganize the entrance, fixed bookshelf. No one knows. Dolores put the map in her jacket pocket and then left the archives room, returning to the central hallway. She counted the doors, 1, 2, 3, up to 6. There was no number 7. But between room 6 and the tool shed, there was a section of wall with a large bookshelf. Dolores approached, her hands running along the edge of the wood. The bookshelf was well secured, but the right side was slightly misaligned. She put both hands on the edge and pushed gently. The bookshelf moved. Behind the bookshelf was a small wooden door, nameless. She turned the knob and the door opened with a click. Inside was a completely silent room. There were no beds, no wardrobes. On 3 of the walls were handmade drawings, each with a little girl wearing a floral dress. Some were smiling, others were serious. Others had sparkling eyes, as if about to cry. In the center of the room was a wooden table. On it, a small oil lamp, some old dolls, and a pile of papers. Dolores approached. The first paper was an unsent letter, hastily written with a black pen. I don't know when they will remember. Maybe never. But that night, when the rain was falling and I saw them trembling in front of the restaurant entrance, I knew I was living again. Mariella doesn't remember me, but she smiles at me the same smile my daughter had before. Dolores took a deep breath. Her hand rested on the table. The room was too silent. Her heartbeat was clearly audible. She turned around, exited the door, and gently closed it. When she took her hand off the knob, a man's voice resonated behind her. "I knew you would come back." Dolores froze, her throat dry. She turned. In the darkness at the end of the hallway, a tall, thin man was leaning against the wall. His eyes bloodshot, his face gaunt. In his hand, he held a small oil lamp. Tomás Huerta. Dolores didn't move. The long hallway was dark, the lights off. Only the faint light of the oil lamp in Huerta's hand illuminated his face, which looked older and paler. But his eyes were still the same, deep and expressionless. Huerta slowly approached. His shoes softly scraped the wooden floor, creaking. The door to room number 7 had closed behind Dolores. His voice was hoarse. "That room is the only place where we truly live. You shouldn't have gone in." Dolores clenched her hands. She didn't back down. "I've seen everything. The drawings, the dolls, and your letters." Huerta twisted his lips. It wasn't a smile, but a mix of mockery and anger. "Letters? Ah, they are explanations, not confessions. I have nothing to regret." Dolores asked, each word firm. "Why did you do it? Why did 4 innocent girls have to replace your loss?" Huerta tilted his head slightly. His hand trembled slightly, his thumb tapping the handle of the oil lamp. "The world took my family from me. The truck overturned in the middle of the night rain. No one helped. No one stopped. The police arrived too late. My wife and my 4 daughters. Twins like yours." Dolores sighed, but her voice didn't soften. "And because you suffered, you turned that pain into a reason to kidnap? To erase their memories? To call it resurrection?" Huerta didn't answer immediately. His eyes looked into the darkness behind Dolores, as if remembering something very distant. "I didn't erase memories." They had already forgotten them. They are children. When no one reminds them, memories fall like leaves at the end of the season. Dolores gripped her hands tightly. "They are my daughters, Tomás. They have a mother. They have a father. They are not yours." Huerta's voice changed, low and sharp. "They don't remember who you are, but they call me father. They grew up with my hands, with my lullabies." Dolores snapped. "Do you think that's love? No, that's confinement. That's manipulation. It's abuse." For the first time in the entire conversation, Huerta's face changed noticeably. He lowered the lamp, took a deep breath as if wanting to contain his anger. "I didn't do anything wrong. I just rebuilt what I lost. Every meal, every laugh, every scar. I remember every scar." Dolores remained silent. Huerta continued. "Mariela, or Fernanda now, fell in the backyard. She scraped her knee. I bandaged it. She doesn't remember you, but she took my hand. I saw her eyes, just like my wife's before, like when I hugged my sleeping daughter for the last time." Dolores didn't respond. She knew arguing was useless. But when she turned to leave, at the end of the hallway, hurried footsteps were heard. 2 men in gray shirts appeared, internal staff of the center. One briefly said, "Mr. Huerta, do you need us to take her to her room?" Huerta nodded. "Close the door. Don't hurt her." Dolores didn't resist. She knew that at that moment, resistance was useless. The two men walked on each side, taking her back to the volunteer guest room. One held the doorknob, the other went in, briefly checked, and said, "Tomorrow morning the truck will take her back." Dolores turned, looking at Huerta. He was standing right at the door, the light from the oil lamp illuminating his face sideways. He wasn't smiling. "If you want to stay with your daughter, that's fine. But if you do, you'll never be able to leave this place." She didn't respond. The door closed. A dry clack was heard. The lock turned. Dolores retreated to a corner of the room. She still had her phone in her jacket, the map, the photos from the files, and the notebook. Nothing was lost. But now she had to wait until morning. At 2:20 a.m., Dolores got out of bed in the volunteer guest room. The lights were still off, the padlock was still on the outside, but she already had a plan. The phone she carried was an old model, without internet, but enough to send an SMS message to the only number she had saved. Leticia Vargas, a former investigative journalist who had written a series of articles exposing undercover charity centers in southern Arizona. She sent her a message. "I'm in a center with signs of human trafficking. I have documentary evidence and letters from the director. There are 4 girls with changed identities. Sending address and evidence from another phone. Please maintain confidentiality. Urgent." Only 5 minutes later, Leticia called back. "Dolores, where are you?" Dolores spoke briefly. Leticia didn't ask anything else. "Send me everything. Photos, plans, letters, everything you have. I'll send it to human rights lawyers in Dallas. But you can't leave there. The police need time." Dolores took photos of all Huerta's letters. Photos of room number 7, the files with the names of the other 3 girls, and the map of the center system. She sent them all to a second phone, one without GPS, which she had prepared in advance. Early the next morning, Leticia replied, "The police have agreed to an urgent investigation. They need 24 hours to obtain search warrants for 3 locations at the same time. Stay calm. I'll continue coordinating." While waiting, Dolores continued to pretend to be normal. She helped Fernanda organize books in the reception room, discussed the sponsorship plan. Throughout the day, Huerta did not appear. The second night, Dolores did not sleep. She sat in front of the small window in the room, looking out at the backyard. The sky was moonless, but quiet. At 9 p.m., Leticia sent the last message. "Tomorrow at 5 a.m., the searches begin. The police will have 3 teams at the same time: the main hacienda, the satellite camp, the Cedar Grove, and the Laurels camp. They will escort you out through the secondary entrance." Dolores put the phone in the inside pocket of her jacket. She carried nothing but an old towel, the gift Mariella had given her in 1991. 4:50 a.m. An unknown employee knocked on Dolores's room door. He wore a black jacket and a bracelet with the Dallas Police Department shield. "Are you Dolores Cardenas?" "Yes." "I'm here under witness protection order. Please follow me. We're leaving immediately." Dolores nodded and followed him through the kitchen service entrance, a hallway that led directly to the hill behind the hacienda. A truck was already waiting. Before getting into the car, she looked one last time at the building behind her. At that very moment, a scream echoed from the patio. "Ma'am!" Dolores turned. In the faint light, Fernanda was running towards her, her hair loose, in a thin jacket, barefoot. She screamed, her voice hoarse from the cold and panic. "Who are you? Who are you, really?" Dolores froze. Then slowly, she reached into her jacket pocket, pulled out a pale pink plastic comb, and placed it in the palm of her hand. "Keep this comb. Your mom bought it for you when you were 6 years old. If you hold it, you'll remember everything." Fernanda stopped. Her hands fell limp. Dolores said nothing else. The police officer opened the car door. She got in. The door closed. The car began to drive away. Behind it, the sirens of the 3 special police convoys began to sound from different directions. The web that Tomas Huerta had built with memories was about to be exposed. In interrogation room number 3 of the Dallas Police Department headquarters, the 4 girls sat in a row. Fernanda, Jimena, April, and Noah. Each was given a bottle of water, a thin blanket, and a set of clean clothes to change into after being transferred from the different orphanages. No one said anything. They all looked at each other, confused. The 4 had never been together at the same time, although they had all heard Papa Huerta mention their sisters born on the same rainy night. An investigator entered, calmly. "Before proceeding with the investigation, we will take DNA samples. It's a mandatory procedure." Jimena frowned slightly. "Why a test? We don't have parents. No one is looking for us." The investigator didn't answer, just motioned for a nurse to enter. A woman approached each of them, gently taking samples from their oral mucosa. In the next room, Dolores and Hector were sitting at the table, waiting for the results. In her hand, she held a small notebook, a thin notebook with a worn spine, where she had noted every small detail about her daughters for the past 29 years. The police allowed her to enter after the samples were taken. They told her, "If you want to try talking to the girls, start with what you remember most." Dolores entered. The room fell silent. The 4 girls looked up. She stood in front of them, looking at each one. Then softly, she said in a clear and slow voice, "Mariela, you were afraid of mice. You always asked me to check under your pillow before sleeping. Isela, you used to hide cookies in your shoebox, thinking no one would find them. Renata was allergic to pineapple. Once her hands got irritated after a friend's birthday party. And Lucia, you wore a red string on your left hand because you said the right hand is for writing. The left hand is for loving." No one said anything. But Fernanda's eyes began to tremble. Fernanda said softly, I dreamed of a woman with a slightly hunched back, her hair pulled back low, and who smiled gently. She held a handkerchief. It smelled just like the handkerchief in the old wardrobe that I still keep." Dolores nodded, her eyes moist. "The handkerchief with the blue border, right? I sewed it when you were 6 years old." Jimena squinted, looking at April. April said softly, "In an old notebook, I once saw the name Renata Cardenas. Someone had crossed it out in ink, but I could read part of it." No one said anything else. Only the sound of turning pages was heard, the sound of the investigator's pen in the next room. Half an hour later, the investigator returned. In his hand, a folder with legal seals. He looked at each of them and then said briefly, "We have matched the DNA profiles of the young ladies with blood samples from 1991, archived at the Children's Hospital of Dallas. The result? All 4 are biological daughters of Mrs. Dolores Cardenas and Mr. Hector Cardenas." Fernanda put her hand to her mouth. Noah leaned back in her chair. April just lowered her head. Jimena didn't look at anyone, but tears began to stream down her face. Dolores waited no longer. She stepped forward, opening her arms. No one reacted immediately. But just as she was about to speak again, Fernanda jumped up and threw herself into her arms. "I don't know who you are, but this smell, I know it." April came closer, wrapping her arms around her mother's back. Jimena, still silent, approached Hector. He raised his hand and gently placed it on her shoulder. Noah was the last. Shyly, she approached and gently touched Dolores' hand. "I don't remember anything, but I feel at peace." In the cold interrogation room, the family embraced for the first time in 29 years. Dolores said, trembling and sobbing, "I promised I wouldn't stop looking for you." The trial was held behind closed doors on a Monday morning in the California State Court in Sacramento. The police escorted Tomas Huerta, dressed in an old white shirt, handcuffed, his gaze fixed, not avoiding it. The court read the charges: organized child kidnapping, illegal detention, falsification of identity documents, psychological abuse of minors. Before the stand, the 4 girls came up one by one as victims and eyewitnesses. Fernanda said, "I didn't know my real name for 29 years. I was taught that the outside world was a bad place and that there was only one person who loved me." Jimena continued, "Every time we asked questions, he read distorted Bible passages, saying we were chosen and that childhood memories were not necessary." April and Noah, though a few words, also confirmed. They had been renamed 3 times during the internal transfers between facilities, each time with a new identity, a different story about where they were found. During the investigation, the police seized 9 of Huerta's notebooks, which included diaries, notes, plans, and detailed descriptions of each girl, their tastes, habits, body language, reactions to being disciplined. The psychologist concluded, "He does not suffer from delusions or mental disorders. He fully controls his emotions. What he did was not due to dementia, but to an intentionally constructed, distorted personal belief." In the last notebook, the last page had a scribbled phrase, "I have no regrets, because at least I lived 29 more years with the girls." The court handed down the sentence: Tomas Huerta, 48 years in prison without parole. The entire system of charity centers was dismantled. All individuals involved, from employees and facility managers to those who falsified documents, were investigated. Dolores and Hector did not attend the final sentencing. They had moved to a small town on the shores of Lake Tahoe, California, where no one knew who they were. They didn't have the strength to live amidst the noise of the press and pity. The 4 daughters received psychological support. They did not immediately live together again, but they visited frequently. One Saturday afternoon, the weather was cool, and at the Cardenas' small wooden house, there was a knock at the door. Dolores opened it, and it was the 4 young women, with wicker baskets full of sweet bread, tamales, and 2 jars of pineapple jam. Fernanda stepped forward. "Mom, do you have any piece of the flower dress? The one you sewed for us?" Dolores looked at them. Then she turned and opened the lowest drawer of the wardrobe. Inside, in a cloth bag, there was a small piece of floral fabric, just a square corner, with a frayed edge and faded color. She took it out, hugged it to her chest, and said softly, "I kept it for 29 years, just waiting for the day you would ask for it." That night, the 5 of them sat around the wood stove. No one said much. Only the crackling of the wood and the smell of roasted corn filled the house. Dolores closed her eyes, breathing softly. No one was missing anymore. No one had a lost name anymore. Only a family remained, starting over from scratch. A year after the reunion, the town on the shores of Lake Tahoe entered spring with streaks of white flowers growing along the wooden fences and calm, windless evenings. In the small Cardenas house, things hadn't changed much. There was still the same long wooden dining table with an old crack, the same leaning stack of Dolores's cookbooks on the shelf, and the guitar Hector occasionally played some old bolero songs. Only one thing was new. The room at the end of the hallway, which had been empty for decades, was now open again. The four sisters, after several meetings, had proposed, together, to transform that room into Mariella's little corner, a place to keep what was once theirs and also what they were about to create. Fernanda, who was now slowly accepting her true name, Mariela, was the one who took the initiative. One Wednesday afternoon, she brought an old trunk bought at an antique market. Inside were some notebooks she had written while living at the hacienda, unfinished poems, and some diary fragments she hadn't dared to share with anyone. "Noah likes to paint," she said. "We could repaint the west wall." Jimena laughed softly. "I can reassemble the bookshelf. After all, I loved playing librarian back then." And April brought a cloth bag. Inside were photos they had taken together from when they reunited until now. In each one, the smile was still a little shy, but clearly real. Dolores didn't intervene. She just stood at the threshold of the door, watching each of her daughters rearrange time in their own way. Hector gently tapped the doorframe, smiling. "It seems they are rebuilding their childhood, not to relive it, but to understand it and move forward." One night, Mariela arrived before her three sisters. She sat alone in the room, flipping through the pages of an old notebook. When Dolores brought her ginger tea, she looked up. "Mom, can I ask you something?" Dolores put the tray on the table and sat opposite her. "When you first saw me, why didn't you call the police right then?" Dolores thought it over. A moment later, she replied slowly, "Because I knew that a true mother doesn't get her daughters back with the sound of police sirens. I had to touch their memories, not their chains." Mariela lowered her head, her finger gently touching the edge of the notebook. "So, what if I don't remember? What if I don't want to be Mariela again?" Dolores smiled, a genuine smile, for the first time in a long time. "Then I will keep waiting. I never put conditions on the love I feel." Outside in the yard, the wind gently swayed the branches of the trees. The light from the hallway projected into the small room, where every crack in the wall also became part of the story. That day, Mariela wrote a line on the first page of her new notebook. "This is the first room I chose to stay in. No one forced me, no one told me just because I wanted to. And for the first time, I wrote my name with complete certainty. Mariela Cardenas." The epilogue has no grand ending. Just that each person, each wound, each dream slowly heals. And in that small room at the end of the hallway, the family began again, from the beginning. And this time, it was truly theirs.